Hi guys, Squirrel here, and today I'm going to show you this little toy. It's the SKRS from CSIO. It's a manual shifter that you can use with Euro Truck Simulator and American Truck Simulator. It actually sits on top of, well, I've got it on top of my manual shifter on my Logitech G27, but they now support Thrustmaster and Fanatec models of manual shifters as well. You get a little different adapter which goes onto here. So first thing I'm going to do is show you how to install this thing, and then the next thing I'm going to do is show you how to configure American Truck Simulator to use it with a full 18-speed Eaton Fuller gearbox. So the SKRS shifter is modeled on the real shifter on a truck. It comes looking like this. It's a single assembled unit. I think you can get an unassembled unit as well. The bottom of it is made out of metal. It has like a metal shaft which has different adapters depending on which shifter you want to buy it for. And then it has the range up and down switch on the back here. And it also has the splitter on the side, the grey button there. It comes with a single USB cable, which you just need to plug in. Windows should automatically detect it. There's no driver install or anything like that. And then the whole unit is designed to sit on top of the existing manual stick and just move the H shifter through its various positions. Now, essentially what we're going to do is take this thing off. That silver cap on the G27 pops off, and there's a screw, and we take the current gear knob off and drop this thing onto the actual shaft and tighten it with a little Allen key nut. Now you can actually see the little Allen key lug screw here. It comes with the Allen key. You just put that into there and you turn it clockwise and it tightens the lug onto the existing gear shaft on your G27 or whatever shifter you happen to have. Now on the top here, it comes in standard as this kind of black finish. Optionally, you can buy these little medallions. I opted to buy an Eaton Fuller 18-speed Medallion. You don't have to do this, it's an optional like $10 or something like that, but they kind of finish the thing off quite nicely. I'll show you how to fit that as well shortly. So what we do, we take a flat blade screwdriver and we just simply pop the grey cover off here. And what that reveals is a hole and there's a Phillips screw in there, so I'll just change the head on the screwdriver from flat blade to Phillips or crosshead screwdriver, and we simply unscrew it, turn it counterclockwise. That then lifts off and it reveals the metal gear shaft that we're going to clamp onto. So all we need to do then is take our little Allen key and we need to just loosen up the lug so that it doesn't actually tighten in at all, and the thing is free to drop onto the existing gear shaft. Drop it on, line it up, and then tighten up the lug screw with the Allen key. And that's it. That's pretty much installation right there. This is the optional step where you can install the Medallion. Now, I actually found this a little bit tricky to install, to be fair. What you're going to need is you're going to need a very, very thin flat-bladed screwdriver or something else that's got a very thin flat blade. And you need to go to the actual front edge there and really kind of force your way in and then pop up the cover. Once you get underneath, it's not so bad. The cover will just lift off. And that's the easy part. The next bit is a little bit more tricky. Now, the way that CSO recommend you install this thing is you get the pointy edge there and you slide it in. You get that pointy edge fitted and then you basically press the upper edge to clamp it in. It sounds easy, but I had to struggle with it for a few minutes to actually get this thing on there. However, once it's on, it looks fine. It fits quite snugly. There's no chance of it falling off, and it does give you quite a nice finish. So, having installed our SKRS, we're now going to go into American Truck Simulator and configure it. Now, this has a USB cable which you plug in obviously to your computer. When you start American Truck Simulator or European Truck Simulator, you should see a little pop-up saying that it's discovered the device. After that, you then need to go into the options screen. So we're going to go into options and controls. And up at the top here, you'll have whatever wheel you're using. In my case, that's the Logitech G27. And then you'll have another option available. You can see you can select multiple devices in American Truck Simulator. Everything I'm going to say applies to European Truck Simulator, by the way. In here, you should now see a CSIO SKRS shift knob. You want to go ahead and choose that. And when you come down to the controller subtype, that should already be on wheel because you're using a wheel. The transmission, if it's not already set to H shifter, you'll want to go ahead and put that on H shifter because that's exactly what we now have. We have a H shifter setup. Now we're going to scroll down and go to the H shifter configuration, which is here. On the H shifter configuration, we're going to want to choose on the shifter layout a range splitter or one of these things. Depending on what gearbox you're going to use, what transmission you're going to use, you can either put this on a normal range splitter, which I'm not going to cover in this video, but I will cover the 18 and 13 speed Eaton Fullers. You can kind of work these things out for yourself, but if we're going to use an 18 speed Eaton Fuller transmission in our truck, we want to choose 18 speed Eaton Fuller here. Now the shifter layout can be simple or advanced, that's up to you. I normally run that on advanced. What that means makes it a little bit more challenging in that you've got to match the revs before you engage the next gear, otherwise you'll hear the gearbox crunch a little bit. Now the important bit, we need to map our actual buttons here, our actual shifter positions. This is actually quite straightforward. First thing to note is you never ever map the reverse. If you've got something mapped here, go click on a sign and then click on that and that will clear that down. Shifter position 1 is quite simply you click on it and then with the shifter you want to go all the way to the left and then all the way to the front like that and then bring it back into the neutral position. Shifter position 2 you want to go left and then backwards like that and then bring it into neutral. Shifter position 3 is dead ahead forward like that and then back to neutral. Shifter position 4 is straight backwards, back to neutral. 5 is all the way to the right and then forward like that. And then 6 is all the way to the right and backwards like that. Now the shifter 1 toggles and the shifter 2 toggle, these are the range selector and the splitter. The range selector goes onto toggle 1, so if we click that and then we move the range selector up and down, it should just pick it up. And then the shifter, we want to click that and then move the shifter position forwards and backwards and it should detect it just fine. Make sure you get those the right way around. Final thing to note is we need to tick this box. Now this was something that was brought in after the SKRS released. It helps support the SKRS. You need to tick that box. It says shifter toggles use switch mode. If you're using, for example, a push button, either like on your control, if you're using a push button, you would have this thing turned off. But because we're using an SKRS and this thing holds its position like that, when you push it into position, it stays in position. It doesn't bounce back out like a button does. That means what that's telling the system is that this thing is a shifter toggle as opposed to just a button press. That's all you need to do. That should now set it up. So we're going to come out of here and then you want to visit your nearest mechanic and then select the Eaton Fuller transmission that you want to use. Now we chose an 18-speed Eaton Fuller transmission in the setup, so we want to go ahead and choose Eaton Fuller 18-speed in here. That's all you need to do. That your truck is now ready, or should be ready, for a quick test. Let's go ahead and do that. Let me just turn off my track IR temporarily. Let's bring up that screen. I'll start the truck now. Okay. Now then, on the screen you will see a real Eaton Fuller 18-speed transmission layout. Now at first this can look a little bit complicated, but it really isn't. It's actually quite simple if you break it down. First thing to note is the neutral position in the middle, and you've then got 6 different gear positions. Now on my G27 that corresponds to my 6 gear positions like so. You can hear the gearbox crunching because I've not dropped the clutch yet. But what the most important thing to note is this, that in a truck it uses a standard H shifter layout. So if you actually look at the neutral position, if you go directly forward, that will put you into gear 1 like that. And then if you come backwards, it will put you into gear 2. And then if you go right, it'll go gear 3. And then backwards, it will put you into gear 4. Now, let's not worry about the L for a second. I'll explain that in a minute. The important thing to note then is that they are the standard gear positions on a truck. That is a natural H pattern, which you might be used to from a car. Additionally, on a real truck, there will then be a certain amount of resistance before you can pull the stick to the left, because that's meant to stop you from doing this accidentally. The reason is that on the left is where you will find reverse, which is by going forward, and the low gear, as it's called, by coming backwards like that. Alright, so we're going to focus just on the H for now. Now, let me just explain what the L means. The L is driven by the splitter here. So each gear can be split, high and low as it's called, H and L. At the moment we're in the L position, which is the button back. If we push the stick forward, you'll go 1L, like that. Bring it back to neutral, push the splitter forward again, and push it forward, and you go to 1H. So what we've got here is a high and low range for gear 1. And that corresponds on the diagram, where it says number 1, it says H and L. L and H are what you use on the splitter, a high and low version of gear 1. Now, apart from that, what you then have is the actual gears. So we've got gear 1, 2, 3, and 4, as I showed you, and they're shown in black. If I now bring the range selector switch up, that puts us into the high range. Now we're in the white positions, so that goes gear 5, gear 6, gear 7, and gear 8, for a total of 8 gears. So 1, 2, 3, 4, range up, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, because each gear on the 18 speed can be split using this splitter, we effectively double the amount of gears from 8 to 16. And now you're thinking to yourself, hang on, this is an 18 speed gearbox, where are the other 2 gears gone? Well, the other 2 gears are in the low gear. If you pull all the way to the left and come back, you'll see it says LL, which is the low gear in the low range. If we put it back into neutral, put the splitter to the forward position, and go back again, we've now got LH, which is the high version of the low gear. Note that if you put the range splitter up, there is no low gear at all. The low gear is only exists when you're in the low range. It does not exist in the high range. So what you've got is 8 main gears, which can each be split for a total of 16, and a low gear which can be split for a total of 18 gears. In reverse, which we'll put forward now, you've got reverse 1L. You can split that into reverse 1H, so you've got 2 versions of the low reverse. You've then got a high reverse, which is R2L and R2H. So on the Eaton Fuller 18 speed, you've actually got 4 reverse gears. Yep, 4 reverse gears. So effectively you've got 18 forward gears and 4 reverse gears to play with. It's quite a lot. It's a lot to get used to at first. Now the other version of this, the other versions of this are the 13 speed and the 10 speed. I'm going to quickly show you the 13 speed, so I'll bring that diagram up now, and you can see the 13 speed layout. The thing to note about the 13 speed layout is, if you look carefully at the black numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll notice that they no longer have a high and low version. In other words, the low range gears can't be split. That's true of the low gear as much as it is for 1, 2, 3 and 4. So now what you've got in the low range, 1, 2, 3 and 4 and low, 5 low range gears. Once you move into the upper position, you then have the same as the 18 speed box. You basically then have another 4 gears which can be split, which is a total of 8 gears, plus your 5 low gears, giving you a total of 13. So note that on the 13 speed box, there is no split version of the low gear. It's just a single low gear. In fact, why don't we go ahead and choose the 13 speed, and I'll show you that in action. So we'll go into transmission. It's very simple to do. Go into transmission, choose the 13 speed Eaton Fuller, and remember that you now have to go ahead and go into options. You must do this, otherwise you're going to get some weird things happening when you choose gears. Scroll down and pick 13 speed Eaton Fuller. Now if we start the truck up, So we're in the low range. Make sure we're in the low range. We're going to have 1. Notice it has no L or H this time because it cannot be split. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we have the single low gear. So that's all we've got, those 5 gears. We move it up, and we now have 5, 6, 7, and 8, which can all be split into 5, 6, 7, 8H. And if we go over to the low, we don't have a low gear. So we have 8 high gears and 5 low gears for a total of 13 gears. And then you're possibly wondering, well, what have we got in the reverse setup? Well, if we're in the low range and we're going to reverse, we've got RL. If we split that, we don't have any effect. The gear is not split. We go into the upper range, we've got RH, and again, the gear cannot be split. So on the Eaton Fuller 13 speed, we have 13 forward gears and 2 reverse gears. If you're just starting out on the with this thing and on the Eaton Fuller gearbox, I kind of recommend you try the 13 speed before the 18. Having fewer gears to play with will make things a little bit easier, particularly when you're starting out driving the truck, because you'll only have 1, 2, 3, and 4 to play with before you move into the high range, where you can now split the gears properly. So that's what I recommend you do. Now, the other thing to note is when you're actually changing gear in American Truck Simulator, what you need to do is depress the clutch, put it into gear, and then bring the clutch up. You need to look at the revs, because you need to have enough revs for the gear that you're about to go into. Now, on a real truck, they have to do things a little bit more difficult. They have to depress the clutch, match the revs, put it into gear, release the clutch, and when they want to change gear, they then have to depress the clutch, bring it into neutral, bring the clutch back up, and by doing that, it will match the engine revs with the transmission revs. They'll then depress the clutch again and go into the next gear. And that's why, you know, when you see trucks pulling away at lights and that kind of thing, it takes longer because they have to do this kind of double clutching operation, making sure they match the revs. It's a lot more difficult than a car. A car has a synchromesh gearbox and makes things a little bit easier, but in a truck, there's a bit more work to be done. However, it's also quite fun to play with. So how do we actually drive the truck then? How do we actually drive it on the road? Well, let's take it for a spin. Now, normally when you're starting out, you'll start out in second gear. I recommend trying second gear to begin with. A lot depends on whether you're starting off on an incline, what kind of load you're hauling, how heavy it is, the engine size. All this kind of thing can play a factor, even the transmission that you chose. But let's try it in second. Bring the revs up, release the clutch, and off we go. Depress the clutch, and let's try fourth. Match the revs. So I just went from second to fourth. I can do that because, well, this load I don't think is particularly heavy. 18 tons. We've got a decent engine. We've got a good transmission. We can go from second to fourth. You can, of course, go from second to third if need be. Remember, you can't split the box because I'm on a 13-speed transmission. If we're hauling much heavier loads, then, you know, that 18-speed will give us more hauling capability in terms of the split gears. So if we move up, we want to go to the next gear. What we need to do is depress the clutch, go into neutral, lift up the range splitter, and up into 5. Now we're in the high range. Now at this point we can split the gears, as you know, we've got 8 gears to play with when we're in the high range. So once you're on the move, you've got a lot more gear choice. But now this is the tricky bit. As you sort of approach a junction, you'll need to range split down into the lower gear range. That's the trickiest thing that you'll find, is when you're slowing down to make a turn, having to remember to range split back down again. It does take a bit of practice, but as I say, it is actually quite rewarding when you get used to it. There we go. So we're going to go range up into 5th. Just give the little throttle a blip there just to keep those revs high, ready for the next gear. Remember, as you're upshifting, when you bring the clutch back up again, your revs are going to be lower because you've gone into a higher gear. The opposite is true when you're downshifting. When you're downshifting, you're decelerating, so you don't want to put it into too low a gear because the engine revs will be off the charts if you do try that. and of course you'll break the transmission. So it's all about practice. It's all about just playing around, driving, seeing what works. 1500 RPM there. Now the Kenny does like to rev a bit more than the Peterbilt, so you can normally get away with a bit more than 1500 RPMs before you go for a change. Like that. And that's how you get a reasonably smooth transmission. Now with practice you can actually learn what kind of revs each gear will take at a given speed, and that way you can anticipate when you're changing gear what revs you need to make. For example, if I want to go down from 8 to 7 now, I can estimate roughly 1600 RPMs in 7th gear. So if I change like that, bring the revs up, engage, and you can see it was a smooth transition. Again, if I was to change gear up now, I'll probably drop to about 1200. So as long as I hold my revs with the throttle for where the revs are going to be when I engage the clutch, I'll end up with a nice smooth change. And that's essentially it. I mean, apart from that, obviously you've got the split, so we can go into 8 high like this for a slightly lower version of the revs. But it's all about the practice. The reverse gears in American Truck Sim, you'll probably not need to use multiple gears, to be honest. But they're there if you need them, particularly if you start moving heavier loads around and you're reversing up an incline, that kind of thing. You've got the flexibility to use split gears if you need them. Now, in terms of the SKRS itself, wow, it's actually raining here. In terms of the SKRS itself, it is actually pretty well built. It's pretty solid. I've tried it on a G27. It works on the Thrustmaster TH8A, is it? I don't have one of those, but I've heard that it's pretty good. Works pretty well on those things. In the video description there is a link to the actual product, and you can also get a discount. The details are in the description. You can get a discount if you get one of these with my code. They've kindly given us a discount. I do bear in mind that I was not given this. I bought this back. I helped to kickstart it. I retweeted it on my social networks and so on because I wanted this to succeed. I thought it was a great idea. Even SCS themselves helped to push this thing and bought one. So I did buy this. So I'm not acting as a shill or anything like that. I'm literally telling you to get one of these things if you want one, because they're actually quite cool, really useful, and if you love trucking, which I'm sure you do, this thing adds that little bit more realism. You can actually get the Jake brake now, as I said, called the Easy Jake, which attaches onto here. That was not available when I first purchased it. I may go ahead and buy one, but I tend not to use the Jake brake that much, but I may go on and get one anyway for completeness. But all the details are in the video description. I hope you enjoyed the setup video, and I hope you enjoyed taking a look at the SKRS. Until next time, guys, take care. Happy trucking.